This is the Iron Sharpens Iron show. I'm your host, Dylan. With me today is my guest, Robyn. Robyn, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Robyn VanDerSys, and I also live in Spearfish, and I am a newly published author. I had my first book published about a year ago, and had my second one published about 2 months ago.
Cool. We're going to jump off with a random Would You Rather game. So we're going to start at the bottom this time. Would you rather have a family of 12 children or never be able to have kids at all?
Ooh, that's tough. 12 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cheaper by the dozen?
Yeah, I might farm them out, but that's a lot of dang kids.
Would you rather spend a year as a cop or a teacher in an inner city neighborhood?
A teacher. I used to drive school bus, so I really like kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you rather have the details of your financial life or your love life made public?
Ooh. Financial life.
Okay. Would you rather change your eye color or your hair color?
Hair color. This isn't real.
Would you rather mentally or physically never age?
Mentally.
Would you rather eat pizza or ice cream as the only food for eternity?
Pizza.
Would you rather be known for your intelligence or for your looks?
My intelligence.
Would you rather be able to breathe underwater or fly through the air?
Flying, definitely.
Would you rather be given a lifetime supply of delicious food or unlimited books?
Books.
It's a tough one, I felt like. Would you rather live the rest of your life as a monk or be followed continuously by paparazzi?
Oh, I'd much rather be a monk.
Would you rather have your debt forgiven or guaranteed good health for a decade?
Good health.
Would you rather sing like an opera star or cook like a gourmet chef?
Cook like a gourmet chef.
Would you rather be locked in an amusement park or a library?
An amusement park.
Really? I thought the library one would get you.
No, I like to have fun.
Okay. Would you rather babysit a crying infant for a day or have an unwanted house guest for a week?
Oof. Unwanted house guest.
Would you rather be a part of an arranged marriage or spend your life as a single person?
Single person.
Okay. Would you rather be stuck on a bus or a train?
A train.
Would you rather be a character in an action-packed thriller or a romantic comedy?
Oh, action all the way.
Would you rather take an action-packed European vacation or spend 2 weeks at a Caribbean resort?
I've done both, and I like the Europe. Okay. I like the action.
Would you rather be known as a one-hit wonder for a novel or a song?
Novel.
Would you rather own a house or rent a residence?
I already own a house.
Okay. Would you rather spend 20 years in prison and be exonerated as innocent, or be put away for 4 years despite your innocence and be considered guilty forever?
What? I'd say the first one.
Okay. These are random. I haven't read them at all. So.
Okay, yeah.
If you had to give up one thing for the rest of your life, would it be brushing your hair or brushing your teeth?
Oh, my hair. Yeah.
Would you rather spend 2 weeks stuck in a psychiatric hospital or stuck in an airport?
A psychiatric hospital.
Would you rather meet the President of the United States or a movie star?
A movie star.
Would you any particular movie star you'd want to meet?
I like Keanu Reeves. He seems cool. Yeah.
Would you rather own your boat or own a plane?
Own a plane.
Would you rather sing a song in front of complete strangers or your closest friends?
Either one wouldn't bother me.
Okay.
I sing karaoke. It's
okay.
Bad.
Would you rather be fluent in all language or master every musical instrument?
I'd rather be fluent in languages. Yeah.
Okay. We'll kind of end there, and we'll kind of jump into like who who is Robyn? Like, where are you from originally?
Originally from Washington State. I've lived in quite a few different states across the country. I've always been kind of the adventurous type, so I just wanted to leave Washington the first time when I was 18. So I moved in with a family, and I was living nanny in Mississippi.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then went back to Washington, got married, moved to several different states, and we've been in the Black Hills of South Dakota for about 7 years.
Where have you? What other states have you lived in?
Arizona, Nebraska, and Mississippi, and then of course Washington, different places in Washington, and then here in South Dakota.
What do your parents do, and do you have any siblings?
So my parents are both retired, but my dad grew up a dairy farmer, and he didn't care for it. So when my grandparents sold the farm, he bought the house and a few acres, and he was a heavy equipment operator and dump truck driver. And then my mom worked as a paraeducator in a school.
Okay.
But they're both retired, and I do have one sister, and she's still back in Washington State, and she's a para, actually.
Okay,
so.
para?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Paraeducator.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And then, I guess, what were your hobbies growing up? Like, what kind of kid were you?
Rowdy.
Okay.
Still am. I like adrenaline. So I was just kind of wild child, you know. I played hard as a kid.
Play any sports?
I played softball, and I was okay at it. I was not athletic, like we talked earlier at the ping pong table.
Ping pong does not take athleticism.
I did get one past you.
Yeah, you did.
But yeah, so I tried a little volleyball. I sucked. But softball was kind of my sport, and then just anything I could get my hands on as far as off-road or like speed.
That's like cars and...
Yeah, I wasn't, as a kid, I never got to race anything, but I like to go with my parents to like mini sprint races and
Do you have your hand on like any cool cars back in the day?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't have enough money for that.
Okay, same. I always thought I'd be one of those kids that would have like a Mustang or something.
No, I never had it. My first car was an 85 Blazer, full-size Blazer, and that was kind of cool.
Okay.
Not fast, but loud.
Did you go to school at all after you got done with high school?
I went to a technical school for travel and tourism, and then I didn't do anything with it. After that, I just worked different jobs. And so, yeah, as a writer, people are like, oh, how much school did that take? Well, none. I didn't go to school.
You just started writing, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that probably played into your love of like traveling, you know.
Yeah. I'd love to travel.
Out of those states that you mentioned before, like which one, like what were like the strengths and weaknesses of like both of them? Or what did you like about each place? What kept you traveling to?
Moving around. Well, we've moved a fair amount of time since I've been married because my husband works for the railroad, but I really like the desert. Okay. So I really liked the weather in Arizona, but I like mountains, and we off-road.
Okay.
My husband and kids ride dirt bikes, and I ride a four-wheeler, and we've had a side-by-side and the whole thing. But we really like to get out on the trails and get outside and kind of mountainous, like we're from in Washington. So we really like it here. I would say the best summers are here in the Black Hills. Did
the mountains in the Black Hills, how do they compare to the ones in Washington?
I wouldn't consider these mountains. They're more like jagged, beautiful hills.
Okay.
But it's better here. We really like it here. And I mean, you still have all the opportunities, the hunting and the off-roading and the trails and the hiking and, but yeah, they're not as tall. Okay. They're not as big, I guess you could say. I grew up not too far from the Cascade Mountain Range, and Mount Baker was a big snowboarding, skiing mountain. Did
you guys get in like the winter sports too?
I never did. My husband did a little skiing, but I never got into the winter stuff because my family really wasn't into it. We were more like campers and, you know, that kind of stuff growing up.
Okay. Big hunters too?
My dad was, yeah.
Okay.
And I like to target shoot, but I've never really gotten into hunting.
Did you guys, were there a lot more elk in Washington?
No. Okay. Mostly deer.
I guess that's further east, like in Idaho area.
Yeah. I mean, I know they have them, and you know, there's a little bear hunting and stuff too, but not.
Oh, in Washington there is?
Not much, but people do it, and you know, people go north into Canada and stuff.
Grizzlies or what?
No, black bear.
Okay. Yeah. And then I guess what point in your story how'd you meet your husband?
You don't want to know that story.
Okay. Do you have the PG
in a bar.
version?
We were in a bar. We were good Christian kids in a bar. Friend of a friend type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've had some adventures since. Tell you what.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you were into the travel. Like, when did you discover that you wanted to write books?
All through elementary school. So guys, I'm like 49 years old, so it's been a long time since I was in school. But all through elementary school, my teachers were like, you need to write. I was on the high school newspaper, and I just didn't love it because you can't be creative. Like, I didn't feel the creativity because I was told to report on something. And so I just never thought about it. And then as I got older, I started writing a bucket list of things I wanted to do.
What kind of jobs are you into, I guess, between writing books and your college days?
Everything. Drove school bus for 5 years. I stayed at home with the kids for a lot of years. We owned an espresso coffee shop. I was a barista, part-time barista, just a little bit of everything. I've had a fun work history for sure. Okay. Driving school bus was probably my favorite job I ever had. I've worked in courthouses. Boring job. Done a little bit of everything. But,
okay.
Yeah.
And then then go back to like how you discovered writing books.
Oh, okay. So then, I had a bucket list with a bunch of stuff on it, and I started checking things off the bucket list. Go to Scotland.
You went to Scotland?
Oh yeah, that was a killer trip.
Did you go to Loch Ness?
Oh yeah. Was
beautiful? What did you think?
I didn't see Nessie, but it was still cool.
Did a part of you, were you like looking for?
Why couldn't there be a Loch Ness monster?
Okay.
Why couldn't there? I believe that Bigfoot could be a thing too.
Okay.
I mean, who are we to say? We don't know what's left behind, what's out there, right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there's all kinds of undiscovered animals in the depths of the sea. Who's to say there's not some Bigfoot thing running around? I don't know.
You're from that part of the country too, where they think he's active.
Yeah, I mean, you hear the stories, and there's no explaining it away. There's noises that come out of the woods sometimes, and I mean, I don't know. I have a creative imagination. I like to think that there's a possibility.
Okay. Yeah, probably the same thing. I like to think that he's out there. But,
you want to believe, right? I mean, I'm not into Santa Claus, but Bigfoot would be cool.
So you're talking Scotland, and then...
Okay, yeah. So, the bucket list thing, and write a book was on my bucket list. Just write a book. And I had no intention of anybody reading it. Maybe try to self-publish on Amazon. Maybe sell a book or two if I could sell it to one person I don't know, I would consider it a success. And so I was like, okay, time to write this book. And I had an idea floating around in my head. And so for the heck of it, I submitted it to a publisher. And they accepted it, and then a different publisher who I'm with now read it and liked it and asked me to write my second book, which is part of a series that he published, and here we go. So this is what I do now.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was your first book about?
My first book was called 75 Miles. Both of my books are based in the Black Hills, and they're both post-apocalyptic. So EMP Events. So electromagnetic pulse, for those of you who don't know, it is a real thing.
Not a zombie apocalypse.
No zombies yet. Maybe eventually.
Okay.
But EMPs, they've been studying them since the 60s. They'll knock out, they're like the silent weapon, so they will knock out anything with a computer chip. So think about it, your electricity goes down, no phones. Vehicles with computer chips, toast.
Have you seen the movie, it was one of the Die Hard movies with Bruce Willis, Live Free, Die Hard? I think they called it what did they call it in the movie where like they like a giant EMP went off, like transportation like was disabled, all these different networks, cards, everything.
Yeah, and it is a real thing, and it was in the news again. The threat of one was in the news again about 6 months ago. Of course, it was the article was floating around my circle of writers, but I mean, if you think about it, the world is toast, right?
Yeah. No
communication, no way to manufacture food or medications or even transport them. Yes, older vehicles would run. And, there's all these different opinions on what would work and what wouldn't. And nobody would ever know until one was detonated. So, and how far widespread it would be in effect. And so, there's a lot of questions about that's why all of us in this genre write about it a little bit differently. So.
How did how did you discover like EMT was like such a little bit more realistic of a
because
apocalypse?
of a book that I read about 10 years ago. My mother-in-law, she's like, you need to read this book. It's called 1 Second After. And it was about an EMP event. And it was written by a ex-military guy. I can't remember what he did in the Army or whatever, but there was a foreword by Newt Gingrich. Everybody knows Newt Gingrich, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, taking it kind of seriously. And Newt Gingrich, in his foreword, said, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so I started reading this book, and it was fictional, obviously, but he tackled all the angles of what would happen, what could possibly happen.
And do you see that as more likely than, say, like a nuclear?
You know, I am not God, and I don't even want to guess because it's scary. I don't know. I don't even like to think about it.
And it sounds like you're more writing from like a realistic apocalypse.
Yes. So I call it like present day post-apocalypse, which really makes no sense, but it's not the futuristic stuff that you can read or the zombie stuff or like this is realistic, what would really happen, because this could happen. I mean, I guess zombies could happen too, but maybe someday I'll write about zombies. But for now,
I feel like an apocalypse without zombies would be boring.
Well, you know what? If you can figure out a way to turn people into zombies, we'll talk, and then I'll write your story.
Okay. I'm just kidding. I just want a bad guy out there. I want to
We got some bad guys in my books. Really bad guys. Yeah.
And so, what was being an apocalypse writer? Was that always something that was that you would have stumbled on wanting to write about?
Yeah, I would say so, because I had tried to start a book about, 8 or 9 years ago, and it wasn't about an EMP, but it was kind of like the end of the world, or the end of our country, basically, with a really bad rogue government, and I may still write that one, but I never finished it. So yeah, I kind of like that. I've always liked those type of movies, the end of the world movies, and the what ifs, and so yeah, I would say that's definitely my genre.
What outside of like these sources, what are like your top apocalyptic movies that you or even that have inspired you?
Oh gosh, well, I love 2012 as far as like natural disaster movies. I loved that movie. I really liked what's the one with Will Smith and the crazy
I Am Legend?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we love that one. And then World War Z is another. And granted, those are zombie type movies, but.
Have you seen The Road?
No.
Oh, you gotta see The Road. I feel like.
Oh, The Road?
Yeah,
I've seen that. I did. That was dark. I didn't like that. When those people were locked down in the basement, that was too dark for me.
What about?
I like a happy ending. That was not going to be happy.
What do you think? What's your writing process look like?
Well, since I don't know what I'm doing, I just do this for fun and a little bit of money. I just write. I just tell stories. It's pretty simple. People are like, oh, do you outline? What kind of program do you use? How many classes did you take? And, I'm like, honestly, I sit at my kitchen table. I use Google Docs. And I just tell the story. I have an idea before I start writing what I want it to look like. But then I just sit down and I start telling the story from start to finish.
I feel like you're already like above like most writers. Like I feel like a lot of like college writers, like they're more afraid to actually put their pen to paper.
People make it way more difficult than it needs to be. I got some really good words of advice. Actually, it was from my first publisher before I knew him. He was doing some social media stuff, giving advice to aspiring writers, and he said, all you have to do is tell your story. You can research all the details later, you can nitpick it later, you can edit later, all that stuff. Just sit down and tell the story that you have. And I was like, yeah. And so I did that with my first book. The other one that I had attempted years ago, I never finished it because I was trying to make it perfect as I wrote it. So I took that advice, and here we are. And so that's been the advice I've taken with me. I just sit down and I tell stories. And I might go back and add a little bit or whatever, but I really... And then I get ideas as I write too.
Cool.
And I don't know if that's normal of authors or not. That's just how I do it.
Like ideas based off like other books or like
I'll just be like my first book, 75 Miles, my first published book. I would read a chapter at a time out loud to my husband, and he'd be like, "Oh," and he had a lot of great ideas. Or I'll be out on my 4-wheeler riding trails, and I'll see a road or see a cave, or I'll be like, "Ooh!" And then I have this really weird creative mind, and so I'll just like start coming up with ideas that I could throw into a book. Or I'll even have like the name of a character in mind, whether it be a reader or a family member or whatever, that I'm like, I'd like to get their name in my book somewhere, and I'll just like pop up these ideas. I'll pop up on how to use their name.
I feel like coming up with names for your characters, I feel like that's a hard process.
It was until I started using names of people I know, or now that I had the first book published, I got a really good fan base. People are awesome. I'm like, I'm just a nobody, but these people are so encouraging. I started throwing their names in my second book and now my third. And so that's because I'm like, oh yeah, names would be hard to come up with. But I just started using their names with permission if I use their last name. But
because like, you know, like you have like your writers like James Patterson, he has Alex Cross.
He's got the cool name. It's the badass name.
Jack Ryan. Yeah. Simple names.
Yeah, mine aren't like that. Mine are everyday people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I guess what's your give me like an outline of what 75 Miles is about.
Okay, so 75 Miles was my first one. It's the story of a young girl who drove against her parents' wishes, drove across the Black Hills and to see her friends and break up with her boyfriend. And all of a sudden there's an EMP happens, and she's like, she knows what it is because her parents are kind of prepper type people. And so she knows what it is. And so she decides to hike across the Black Hills by herself. She goes and sees an old neighbor. They're like, yeah, you can do it in about a week. You know, they arm her and they give her food and a backpack. But in the meantime, she has all these issues that she has to overcome. People trying to get her, weather, just all kinds of bad, crazy stuff. And so she goes from being kind of a typical teenage girl to being a tough little badass at the end.
I feel like that's especially tough for definitely a female. Like, like you're definitely targeted more. Like, I imagine there's like two different factors. Like I feel like if guys naturally want to protect females.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So then you have that factor. Then you have the factor of you having like your sickos out there.
Right.
Which one do you kind of explore both?
I do. I guess apparently I write character based, and so I really like to develop characters. And so she meets people that help her along her journey, and then she also has people that want to harm her. And so, when I wrote this, like I said, I didn't think it was going to be a published post-apocalyptic book. And I was worried that no one was going to read it because the main character was a teenage girl. But my best readers were adult men, and they loved it. And now I'm working on the sequel, and it's her dad's journey home. And it starts off in a coal mine over in Gillette, Wyoming. And then it's his journey home, and then he goes to look for her. And the mom has to hold down the fort, and there's people, that they have to ward off, and so yeah,
okay,
lots of action. That's kind of my thing. I really like to develop characters, but I really like to write in action. A lot of authors in my genre are men, and they don't really develop their characters. They're more about the shoot 'em up, and because they're guys, right? Guys don't really get into the character building and the thoughts and emotions that go through your head, and so I like to incorporate that. That's how I write.
Well, what are your tricks of writing a good action scene?
Picturing it in my head, what would I like to see if this was a movie? What would I like to see going down? And I picture it in my head, and then I just try to get descriptive without dragging it out too long, because nobody wants to read a drawn out long thing either. I do more like little bits of action throughout, and then I usually have a big scenario at the end.
What about do you have a process of where you explore different martial arts type stuff, or
no, because I'm clueless on that stuff. So my second book that I was asked to write, I had to incorporate military, like a Russian invasion, and I had to incorporate ham radio, which I know nothing about either, and so I did. I got some help from friends and strangers actually on how to write that stuff in, but I don't know anything about martial arts, but I do know a lot about firearms. So, and that's kind of how we are here in South Dakota, right? Everybody hunts or at least has a weapon or two for self-defense, and so that's more my angle.
Cool. I guess like how in depth like the weapons do you go through? Like, are there
what kind it is?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like the first book, I actually wrote in the gun that her old neighbor, it was an elderly guy, the gun that he gave her for self-protection was the gun that I carry. And so, you know, I was like, because I'm familiar with that type of pistol. And since then, I've learned a lot more about different kinds of guns. And I asked for help. I have so many people that I've asked for help. Hey, what would happen if you shot somebody at 4 feet away with this type of gun or whatever, you know? How
important even as a fictional writer is to make your book as realistic as possible?
To me, it's 100% important, because people that read this genre are very smart and very outdoorsy. They're going to catch it if you write something in wrong. My last book, I had a reader reach out to me and she's like, I didn't like the part where the medic used a tampon to plug a bullet hole. And I was like, she's like, I just didn't like that. And I was like, well, it's real, because an Army medic friend of mine actually told me that's what they would do. They had those in their bags for that purpose. And so I'm like, things like that people catch or think that they caught, it's all thought out. Like I always say in the beginning of my book, if I miss something, it's my fault, not the help that I've enlisted, because I do reach out and try to get as much help as I can.
Has there been an area where you have messed up, and like how did you overcome that? And
I don't know yet.
Or do you have like editors like read it and or like do you have like your confidants who are like maybe a little bit more outdoorsy than you that you'll have go through and read it?
Like my ham radio guy, he was just a reader of mine, a follower of mine on Instagram. And so when I went to write the second book, I was like, I started following ham radio Instagram pages, and I saw that he was also following them. So I reached out and I'm like, hey, are you a ham guy? And he's like, yep. And he was awesome. And now he's actually helping some of the other authors in my publishing group with their ham radio questions too. And so, I would like send them a couple of pages and be like, read this. Tell me, does this sound right? Is my jargon wrong? You know, because you want to sound like you know what you're talking about, even if you don't.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I usually don't.
Definitely. I think, like, it's kind of weird as, like, somebody who's, like, been, like, certain things, like, if small details, I feel like, if they're not done right, like, if you were to call a Marine a soldier in a book, like that would probably turn off. I probably wouldn't even be able to finish the page.
No, and I even had in the book I'm working on right now, I threw one of my readers into a character in that book, and she's from New Zealand. And I was like, I sent her, it wasn't much, but I was like, hey, this is your character. Is this what you would say? And she's like, no, New Zealanders wouldn't really use that phrase. Or so I reworded it.
How do you write in that New Zealand Australian accent?
Well,
is that difficult?
I just said that she had an accent and she introduced herself and she was from New Zealand, a backpacker from New Zealand.
Okay.
But I was like, read this, and she was like, we wouldn't say that.
Okay.
So I fixed it.
Okay. What about in terms of like what do you think is important steps for like a first time writer? What are like key aspects where how do you surround yourself with good people? How would you look at getting your like name out there?
Well, I know nothing about publishing, whether it be the self-publishing side of things or not. I'm lucky that I'm published, because I don't know if I'd want to tackle it, but there's people every day self-publishing on Amazon and killing it. So I would say my first piece of advice would be tell your story, and then just go from there. But if you put the cart ahead of the horse and you start worrying about everything that goes on Amazon, I don't know if you're going to finish your book, because it's pretty daunting from what I hear. I have a friend here in town, and he was as an 8-year-old child, he was in the big flood of 1972 in Rapid. I'm sure you've heard about it. And he's got a publisher, but a lot of it he's having to do himself. And he'll ask me questions, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. I probably would have gave up, honestly, because it's pretty daunting. But people do it every day, and they have great success. So just tell your story, and then you'll figure it out.
How do you find a good publisher? Like a publisher that like works.
I don't know. I lucked out. Like I said, I lucked out. I submitted it to Doomsday, and they were like, "Yep, we want it." And then then like a month after my book came out, then my current publisher reached out to me and was like, "Hey, will you write this book for part of our series?" And he's awesome. And then in the meantime, last September, my first publisher closed its doors. They shuttered.
Okay.
And so my second publisher took on my first book as well, and we're having even better success with it now. And for me, honestly, it's been a luck thing. Okay. I would say just submit it to as many as you can, and you should not pay a publisher. I've also heard those nightmare stories where people will actually give money to a publisher, and you don't do that.
Are there like sketchy people out there that try to like target like those first time writers?
Yeah. Another author was telling me about a buddy of his that wrote kind of an autobiography, and I think he's into it like almost $15,000 right now.
Jeez.
Between the publishing and the editing. And I'm like, absolutely not. A good editor shouldn't charge you maybe $500. I don't know, but thousands of like $10,000 they charge this guy. So yeah, there's people targeting hopeful authors.
What are like common red flags that you would tell people to like look out for?
The ones that want your money.
Okay.
If they're a real publisher, they're not going to do that. They just take on your book. And
was it a lot for you to kind of trust this guy who was this person that was wanting to be your publisher? Were you
the first one, or
or the one that? Yeah, I guess the first one who published your first book.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I knew he's a pretty well-known author in the genre, and so I was like, okay, this guy's a legit dude, and he writes good books and he sells a lot of books, so he probably knows what he's doing. And but I did reach out to some of the other authors that he had started publishing, and just was like, hey, what do you think? And they're like, I only had one of them actually even respond back. No, two. And they're like, yeah, he's a good guy, go for it. And then the second publisher, I thought about it all last summer, and I was like, I like this guy. And now I call him my book dad. Like, I would trust him with my life. So I'm pretty lucky.
Now you've gotten into your let's move into like your newest novel that you have out.
Okay.
What are the ins and out of that? How's it different from the original, your 75th one?
So
how's it different from the 75th Mile?
Okay, so are you talking about the second book that just came out, or are you talking about the one I'm working on right now?
Well, I guess we can talk about both, but
you probably want to know about the second one.
The second one's the one that's out right now that people can buy.
Yes, yeah. Okay, so the second one is called Black Hills Fall, and long story short, it's part of another series that's out called the October Fall series. And so my publisher had helped co-write it with another guy, the first 3 books called October Fall. And he had this idea of having the same event, same timeline, but how it looked around different parts of the country. And so he started asking guest authors to write for the series. And so he reached out to me last May and was like, hey, think about this. I want you to write one for this series, how it looks in South Dakota. And I thought about it all summer. And then I was like, yep, I think I want to do this. And so that was my second book that just got published last couple months ago.
Cool.
Yeah, kind of a cool story, really. I mean, to have somebody seek you out feels pretty dang good. I'm like, I'm just a nobody. Like, what?
Hey, you sought me out. You messaged me to come on my podcast. So, and I'm still a nobody.
You're not a nobody, though. Oh, you got a following and all kinds of guests, and no.
Okay.
I'm your most exciting guest.
No, definitely. Like every single one of them has been like an excitement, but still, like it's been an honoring having people that like I wouldn't expect to meet. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And I guess what's this story about? What is South Black Hills Fall?
Black Hills Fall. Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you go south? Why was it Black Hills Fall instead of South Dakota Falls?
Well, it takes place in Black Hills.
Okay.
And I don't know. I guess with the following that we have here of people from all over the world that come here, I was like, I'm going to capitalize on that.
Okay. Not even shying away that you're trying to capitalize.
I'm like, I have no filter and I am 100% honest about all of it. Okay. So here I am. But yeah, so there's another Emp event, and this book is based about a neighborhood, and it's kind of So I use the names of Spearfish and all these other towns. It mainly takes place in Spearfish, but the neighborhood that my main characters live in is fictional. And it's kind of in my head, kind of over off of, kind of by like exit 17-ish.
Exit 17? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that neighborhood bands together to survive. And then about halfway through the book, there's a foreign invasion in Spearfish. And their intention is to take Ellsworth Air Force Base. So again, pretty realistic scenario. And they band together with the town to try and drive out the Russians.
Cool.
Yeah. This one's definitely more action-packed than my first book.
Now, do you, when it comes to writing a story, do you use, like when you're coming up with characters, I know you said earlier that you used like people that you know, but do you ever use like main characters from like movies to come up with your, okay.
No, so in my second book, Black Hills Fall, the main characters are married and I have my husband and myself in mind. And then they have 3 kids named Taylor, Cody, and Jake, which are the names of our 3 kids. Taylor attends BH, which our oldest used to attend BH. I really designed that family around our family. And then, you know, some of the other characters, I'll have certain people in mind, but usually I just use names of people I know or my readers' names. Okay. And then I just kind of go from there.
Okay.
I did use like this one of my readers, his name's Jairus, and he's a black prepper. And he had reached out to me after reading my first book, and he said, you know what, it's not very often that people put black preppers into their post-apocalyptic books, and he really appreciated that. So I'm like, I'm going to honor him and put him and his character, because he's kind of a prepper himself. I'm going to put him in my second book. And so that character was designed after him. But usually I just use names.
So being friends with you, you never know if people are gonna show up in your book.
You might show up in one of my books.
Wow.
But usually I don't make anybody be a bad guy without their permission, okay. And I usually don't kill them off without their permission.
Okay.
Usually.
So like when you do kill them off, you're not gonna be like, oh, this dude like some stupid death. He
peed his pants out of fear.
Or he fell asleep and he got ran over by a tank.
No, it would be a much more like honorable death if it was you. I'll ask you. If I use your name, I'll ask you first.
And then what about in terms of what's your character like? Is she different from you?
No, she's pretty much the same.
Okay.
And I'm not some just fearless warrior or something, but I do have guts, maybe a little bit more guts than the average person, I would like to think. And just, I'm super patriotic, and I don't mind fighting for what's mine, and you have to. And I don't think that I would cower down in fear in a situation like that. And so, but none of us really know until we're put in those situations, right?
Yeah. I've heard it too, like people that have never been in, like people that either have that fight or flight mentality, and you never truly know until it's really happening in front of you.
Well, and I also try to write realistically, because some of these books you read, it's just this one guy and he's just kicking butt and he's just not afraid of anything and he's killing people left and right and it doesn't bother him. I'm like, I don't care who you are. If you had to kill someone, even out of self-defense, it's going to bug you, right? And so I try to write that in a little bit, even for the male characters. I don't care who you are. It's going to take a toll on you mentally and emotionally. And so I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I also try to make it realistic. I don't think it's realistic for somebody just to go around just kicking butt and shooting people up and not having consequences, So.
Okay. And then what, is more your character, more of your, I guess I don't want to say idealized self, but what you're, I know I have this character in mind sometimes where he's probably he's based off me, but he's a lot more badass than I am.
Right, yeah.
But is that kind of similar?
Maybe. I mean, like I said, I try to make them realistic, but yeah. I mean, I even mentioned she's got a little weight to lose, and and she gets impatient sometimes, and so I try to be realistic. Okay. But yeah.
You don't give what about for your husband? Are you nice to your husband in it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's probably in that book probably more patient than he is in real life.
Okay. So you upped his patience points.
Yeah, but I think if we were put in in the book, if we were put in the scene where we had to go fight Russians, I think that he'd be probably more freaked out than the character in the book was. Or he'd be like, "No, you're not going." But you need to read it. There's some stuff in there that I think, and I also like to make people think, how would I react in this situation if my daughter did this or was put, that's a big deal for me, is to write realistically.
Okay.
So.
What about, what other characters are in this book that are there any fictional characters that aren't based off?
Yeah, well, I'd say probably at least half.
Who's the bad guy?
I can't say too much because then the other thing I write into that second book is they're in a community, right? It's not always going to be perfect. It's not going to be 100% like-minded people. It starts out that way, but then they have other people show up that cause some problems. And then they have people try to break into their neighborhood and steal stuff. And
well, is more so, I guess what I was getting at is more so the Apocalypse the antagonist than an actual person?
There's lots of different people. Because, think about it, right? All of a sudden, your average American has enough food to last them maybe a week. People get hungry, they get desperate, and they get violent. So now all of a sudden, well, hey, that guy over there, I know what's up at that neighborhood. I know those people are prepared, or I know that guy has solar power at his house. People are going to go try and take what's not theirs. It's just what would happen, So they have to deal with all that. And then, of course, the foreign invasion, they have to deal with that.
What do you think is worse, having to deal with people that are in your neighborhood that are in your town that are only out for themselves, or the Russian invasion?
I think that's harder to deal with than the Russian invasion, because Russians are strangers, right? When you have people and other Americans that are harming other Americans because they want your stuff, that would be a lot harder to defend your property and your family from, right?
Is there a stance where these guys, some of the people who are fighting within their neighborhood, where they find that common cause within with the Russians?
No, not necessarily in the neighborhood. You'd have to read. Let's just say the neighborhood has a new visitor that isn't necessarily a good guy.
Okay.
Causes some problems, and so but then you have to deal with, what do we do? This guy has a child, and there's just all the scenarios that I like to make people think about. When it's your friends and neighbors, it's a lot harder to defend yourself from them than a stranger, like a Russian soldier, right?
How do you create a bad guy then? The guy that's going to be a...
I usually have somebody in mind.
Okay.
I don't use their name, but I usually have somebody in mind, and then I'll just kind of take it from there and think, well, what could this person be like? How bad could this person actually get? And then I exaggerate it a little bit.
And then I guess in terms of do you have any interest in exploring other genres?
I have a weird sci-fi idea that I might pursue someday. We'll see. I don't know. Okay. It's weird because with futuristic, you can do anything you want. It doesn't have to be realistic. But I don't know. That feels a little daunting. So I don't know. We'll see. One book at a time.
You could throw aliens within your South Dakota?
No, just a weird future of what things could look like in our country.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess in terms of any last closing statements about your books that you want to kind of lay on for people?
No, I just, if you're interested in my books, find me on Instagram, or, I sell my books on Amazon, and then it stores all over the Black Hills. And if you have questions, reach out. I love it when people reach out and ask questions about it. I really enjoy that. Or somebody that's like, I've always wanted to write a book. I love encouraging people to write.
Would you ever get into teaching or mentoring other?
Mentoring, yes. Teaching, no, because I don't know what I'm doing. But encouraging and mentoring, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna kind of jump off into a little rapid fire game.
Okay.
to kind of close out with everything.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit.
Okay.
What was your first job ever?
Picking strawberries for a farmer.
What is your favorite month?
July.
What about your favorite season?
Summer.
Favorite animal?
Dogs.
Favorite color?
Red.
Favorite food?
Cheeseburgers.
Who is your hero?
Oh gosh. Jesus.
Okay. If you're in a zombie apocalypse, who's your 5 crew that you're gonna have with you to like take down the apocalypse?
Oh gosh, you'd have to give me time to think about that.
Okay.
That's serious. That's a serious question.
You could use fictional people for this too.
I'd probably find 5 Navy SEALs.
Okay.
I don't know.
What is your go-to pastime?
Go-to pastime?
Yes, ma'am.
Like for relaxation?
Sure.
Hopping on my 4-wheeler and going for a ride.
What was the last vacation that you went on?
When I got hurt in Mexico.
What are key aspects to what are key aspects to get yourself prepared to write?
A quiet house. Okay. Or I'll go to City Brew.
Okay.
Go figure. Not quiet. But.
So people could find you there if they...
If my house is too loud, I'll be at City Brew.
You already said where you grew up. What was your favorite subject in school?
English.
What is your favorite dessert?
Oh, gosh. White wedding cake.
Do you have a favorite store?
Yeah, probably Cabela's or Target. Yeah.
Who are your 5 favorite authors?
Oh, Mark Twain.
Okay.
I don't know.
Or who are your favorite authors in general?
They kind of run the board. There's a gal that I really, really like from Colorado named Sandra Dallas, and she writes historical fiction. Go figure. Yeah. William Forstchen. Greg Matthews. I really like him. As for the 5th, I'm going to say my publisher, Boyd Craven Jr.
Okay. Not dropping his name on purpose. What time, are you a morning person or night person?
Morning.
What time of the day do you feel most comfortable to write?
Morning. After I bring my kid to school and then I go home, that's when I accomplish the most.
Okay. What is your favorite type of music?
Classic country.
Get any favorite musical artists that you like?
Waylon Jennings. Okay. AC/DC, come on. Like the 80s metal stuff. Metallica.
Favorite movie genre?
Action.
Okay. And what's one subject you would like to learn more about?
I would really like to learn Spanish and learn more about the language and the history.
Do you have any plans to try to make your book Spanish?
No, but I would really like to make my first book into a movie.
Okay. And then if you were to have anybody as action stars or anybody play your main characters, who would you want to play? I don't really watch movies anymore. This is terrible. And so people ask me this about 75 Miles. Who would your actress be for the 16-year-old girl? I honestly don't know who they are anymore. Somebody that's tough. Okay. Somebody that's tough, but a normal girl, but she ends up being tough. Who would you want to be the dad? Oh gosh. Because I feel like that one you could play with. You could get that classic actor. Tim McGraw. Really? I kind of like him as an actor. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I could see him being the dad. That just flashed. No one's ever asked me that question before, but I could see Tim McGraw as the dad. Okay, my mom would definitely love that book. And she'd definitely see the movie. I don't think she'd read the book, but you'd have. And then I guess who are the most important people in your life? My family and my closest friends.
for sure. I keep my circle pretty small, and I've got some amazing supporters in my life. So.
And then just to kind of close out, like people want to find you, where would they find you at?
So most of my books are sold on Amazon, and then of course local, like the airport gift shop has them. In Sturgis, we've got Black Hills Rally and Gold. Here in Spearfish, we've got the Junk Drawer and Good Earth, and Chubby Chipmunks, Homestake Lab. They're kind of sprinkled around the Black Hills.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just kind of close out. Any last closing statements?
No, this has been so much fun. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Robyn, for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time. As iron sharpens iron, and then one man sharpen another. Thank you.
That was awesome.